Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Koki Otaku. Today with us we have a very special guest. He voices Granvault Lowain, or Vault, in A Journey Through Another World, racing kids while adventuring. The golden-haired hero in Chilling in Another World with level 2 super cheap powers. Kir Royale in Bye Earth. I know, they're getting longer. Also, a very special one. A narrator and also the changer in Love After World Domination. I'm so looking forward to that one. Till Nys, however you want to say it, because we don't know how to say it. From Suit Gundam. The Witch from Mercury. And Gatekeeper Hakka, the demon prince of Momochi House. So please give it up for Monty Thompson.
Thank you. Well, Monty, welcome to. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure to meet you. So, I feel like we're going to have fun today. By the way, guys, we're recording early in the morning. I know you guys see it always in our face. We're doing midnight or early in the morning. So, I feel it's too early today, but we'll have fun. I just need caffeine.
That's right.
Talking about caffeine, something very essential for all those parents today. One of the new series on Crunchyroll. I feel like trying to develop this culture of guys have kids. We need more kids in this world. Talking about the series A Journey Through Another World, raising kids while adventuring. We have the character of Vault. For those who haven't seen
that one,
very
wholesome show. It's kind of something the whole family can enjoy. You're not going to deal with really any fan service or anything like that. That was kind of one of the first things that was presented to me from the director. And that's a whole nother issue we'll get into. This show has kind of changed hands. Directors have been kind of passed along with this. It was originally directed by Jonathan Rigg, who cast me as Vault. But just due to whatever scheduling things they have, he's kind of had to switch shows, and now we are being directed by Caitlin Glass. But again, it's just a wholesome show. Really, kids can watch it, family can watch it. You're not going to watch this in front of your friends and be like, "Oh, this is weird." My character Vault, he's a lot of fun. He gets introduced right in the first episode. He's kind of the captain of this night group in the town, and essentially he recruits the main character and these kids to fight monsters. So he's like, "Oh wow, you're suspiciously strong." And the funny thing is that just continues to be a thing. Like every time they go out and defeat a monster, he's like, "How did you do this?" It's like, don't you know by now that these kids are broken, and that's the whole point. But it's a fun show for sure.
Background story of this show. Like I mentioned, I feel like this series intended for people to start having kids, or at least to start feeling that, I wish I had kids. Because
it's a cute show, and Matt Shipman, of course, he plays the main character, and he finds them in this forest. It's a really dangerous forest, and so he's like, "Oh my god, you kids aren't supposed to be here." So yeah, he brings them along with him, and then he finds out before anybody else, it's like, these kids are, superhuman, and so it is definitely a cute show. Yeah, it's definitely a fun one.
I was surprised. It is a isekai. He reincarnated by accident again. They got by accident, kill him, but he's like, "Hey, I'm so sorry. We're in the middle of something, and you just got blasted to the other world."
Yeah. It fits a lot of the genre tropes of hey, we're somehow in another world and all this, but this time it's these kids that were in this world to begin with that are crazy overpowered. And my character he kind of recruits them and tries to be there for their safety, but they end up being there for his safety. So it's kind of a flip.
For real, it's a very cute show. So let me ask you, Monty. So far, the show has made the goal to incentivize you to have kids, or you're still holding on this?
I definitely I want kids. I do, but. I'm sure my parents are getting a little tired of waiting on that. I'm 34. I just turned 34 this year, so my parents were, kind of like, "Let's go, let's get on that." But also, I'm really
biological
my
clock
career,
is ticking.
So it's like I'm trying to kind of balance all of that stuff out.
We're in the same boat.
Yeah,
we're in the same boat. Yeah. Exactly the same. Every time I see this show, I'm like, "Oh," I'm like, "Hey, can we should have kids."
Yeah, look how cute they are. Real life, whether it shows, it's like, it's a kid. It makes you want one. I want one of those, but it's like, the responsibility.
And then I get the
economy.
The bank account. Oh crap! Well, we can't.
I can barely afford my own lifestyle. I can't bring out a kid.
And that moment we get another email. Hey, your internet provider going to charge you next day. And I'm like, yeah. And bro, I can't afford this right now. But let's chill out a little bit with another series. One of the latest series, which was a big trend last season, talking about chilling in another world with level 2 super shit power, where you had the main antagonist, golden haired hero.
Haired hero.
Yeah, he sounds like a background. His name sounds like he's a background character, and that's when I was cast. I was like, are you sending me an email to ask me if I want to accept the role of like a background character? They never give his name. That's kind of one of the running gags in the show, is that they just always refer to him as Hero or the Hero. And yeah, he teams up with Suya, I believe is her name, or voiced by Alexis Tipton. And we basically are Team Rocket in the show. We're the bad guys, but we're not really the bad guys. We just constantly get into trouble, whether we mean to or not. We kind of fail forward, even though we may get caught. The next episode we're out of jail. Then we get caught again and something like that. And I'm always getting in my own way. That was kind of the joke for the character. And even though he was the show's main antagonist, he was really more for comedic relief in an already funny show. So had a lot of fun. He was very over the top. Really kind of out there. Had to just kind of drop all inhibitions and just kind of go with it, because he would, like I said, every episode, you never knew what kind of trouble he was going to be in, but it was always going to be something different. So,
how do you describe this series for those who haven't watched it yet? And by the way, you can throw some spoilers because it has been released a few months already.
Sure. I mean, the show itself, it's an isekai. I mean, there's only so much you can say about that genre. You get this kid who goes into a world, and basically I was supposed to be the main character. My character was supposed to be the main character. He gets transported into this world. He's got maxed out stats. And that's why in the very first episode, everybody gravitates to my character. They're like, oh my God, the hero that's going to save our world is here. And they always, because the whole premise of the show is they would bring in people from other worlds and stuff with, whatever, and they would serve their purpose in their world. But the main character technically came in and stole my skills. So I have maxed out stats, but I didn't have any skills, and I couldn't progress. So, like, if I had to fight anything, I was actually very weak. And then, of course, his stats on paper were essentially nothing, but he had all the talents and all the skills and could, teleport entire towns. And my character's like, that was supposed to be me. But very, very goofy show, over the top. And like I said, my character was, in this already funny show, kind of the comedic relief for it. So.
It is a harem. We have a harem here.
Oh yeah. And we had fun. It was fun because mentioning that, it just brings me back to, like, I think it was like episode 4 when I was lecturing his whole harem. I was like, we came up with the word cahooters, because there's like this little line we were delivering. It's like, these are the people you were in cahoots with, and they must be those cahooters. And we wrote that up in the booth. It was like, is cahooters a line or a word? And I'm like, no, but it's funny and it's gonna work. So we rolled with that. We cracked up in the booth when we recorded it. We're like, we're keeping that. So made fun of his little harem that he had, and then of course tried to basically imprison him. And then next thing you know, he takes the whole town and teleports and disappears. And my character's like, okay.
I was gonna say, in any case, if it wasn't a word, just coin the word. Boom.
Yeah, seriously.
It's also something that we saw how a main character can become a villain in the story, because he was a hero. And suddenly we see how he went slowly from the main character to the antagonist.
Sure.
Once and twice and maybe 3 times, because he
and the thing is like, he was never intentionally trying to be, well, he was trying to be bad towards the show's main character, but he was always trying to do right by what he thought was his role as the hero, because that's what they actually kind of set him out to do. But then the hero and his little group, they started getting in a tandem with the Demon King and all that stuff. So they were technically doing some shady stuff too, even though they were all kind of getting along. And then my character just kept getting in the way, essentially. It's like they would just about be ready to finish something up, and then my character shows up trying to save the day, but instead makes things worse. So it was a fun character, because I really like that kind of Team Rocket dynamic, like I mentioned. It's like we weren't really trying to be the bad guys, but we ended up kind of being the bad guys.
It is a good show. watch out where you watch it because you have a few edgy scenes. So this one will embarrass you from
this one. And I always like just at work, if I ever get a big role and stuff, I always kind of like to show it to the people I work with or the people that may come in. I'm a very good support circle, so I'm very thankful for that. But that was one of those shows. It's like, okay, I'm in this new show, but I have to be very picky about what I show you. I don't want you to like check this out and be like, what do you do for a living? But you watch an anime, you're going to get that a lot. So,
Yep.
But getting a little bit more serious, one of the new series where you have a main role. This is not a drink; it's a character. Talking about Bye Bye Air, when we had the character of Kir Royale.
Yeah.
And I'm struggling because every time I Google this character, I get drinks and like, wait, why are we talking about cocktails here?
yeah, so probably because they're thinking you're looking up Crown Royal or something.
No,
but
this
here,
is a drink.
Here is he is a dad. But also, there's layers to that onion as well. When he shows up early in the show, he's one of the 4 soloists of the show, and he's a centaur. And I think like the premise, I'm not too informed on the whole premise of this show, but I'm pretty sure the main character is one of the only people in this universe that's actually just a human. Everybody else is some kind of animal hybrid, and Kir he's a centaur, and he's one of the 4 soloists that does this rite of passage thing. And so the main character duels him, and in the first episode, it's actually a kind of a little bit of a flashback. And I guess swords are really important, like their personal swords and stuff are very important in this show. And the main character just keeps breaking my sword, and they keep on rebuilding it, and I keep coming back and fighting her, and she just keeps breaking my sword. But he's a bad guy, but not really. I think deep down, he's more of a noble soul. It's just the role that he has to play in his universe kind of makes him seem like he's a little bit bad, but I think deep down, he's actually pretty virtuous. It's funny because the last episode we recorded, he's speaking with Adonis, who is one of the main characters in the show. And it was a very friendly, very cordial conversation about how Adonis was going to try to put his sword back together fused with someone else's sword. And he was very gracious, very accommodating throughout that whole process. And it made me think, is this guy really all that bad? And then in the next episode that we're going to record this week, he basically gets possessed and goes full bad guy. So there's that. Unfortunately, it's out in Japanese, so I'm not spoiling anything or anything like that. But yeah, he basically kind of, due to the fusion of the sword, which then, rather than being its own standalone sword, kind of grows out of his arm, it kind of, possesses his body and makes him a bad guy. And I'm pretty sure at the end of this episode, it will be the end of the road for Kir. But we'll see if he comes back later. He has returned several times over the course of the series, but I'm pretty sure this is the last time.
Definitely, this is a show for those who are very fan of character with animal ears and tails. And
yeah. And I really enjoyed Kir because a lot of my characters, like Vault, is not like in terms of just like how they want me to voice the character. Vault isn't too far from my natural speaking voice. The golden-haired hero, he was way over the top. Like I had to kind of go into my upper register quite a bit there and just go completely bonkers with him. Whereas with Kir, I finally get to use my lower register, and that's what I like. That's where I feel like my wheelhouse kind of lies. So with him, it was...
Wait, why would you say that?
I have a pretty good range. I just feel like it's more comfortable for me to go lower than to go higher. But that's just me. I think directors may have. That's funny because different directors know you for different stuff, which I can get into later when we talk about my role as the narrator. But different directors will kind of, as they work with you, some directors may know you as like, this is the guy that can go like super, super crazy, or this is the guy that can be really emotional, or or you have actors that are just consistently themselves. It's like, hey, they're going to give a solid performance as just their voice. So you're kind of different in the eyes, and I'm sure they kind of share information and all that. But yeah, it's fun to get to explore your range as an actor, while also still being you.
So talking about you, how you met to the anime voice acting?
Sure, yeah. So I always start kind of like I'm sure everybody else will say, is that everybody's journey is different getting into this industry. I never got into acting at all until I was 26. I grew up in a very small town. I grew up on a farm outside of a very small town. So like school theater, things of that nature really weren't available to me. growing up, even though I would always participate in like the school play that we'd have once every 4 years. I never really knew that this would be something I'd want to do. And then so I got all through college and was just kind of chilling one night. And I grew up on Dragon Ball Z and like going home and after school watching Toonami and all those shows that were on like Gundam Wing and G Gundam and Zoids and of course DVC and Hamtaro.
Yeah.
And then like when I got into high school and into college and just kind of grew away from it. I wouldn't say grew away from it. It just wasn't something that was on my radar really anymore. And then I kind of in my mid-20s was like, remember those shows that used to come on really late at night as a kid that, you know, you'd had to sneak downstairs and try to watch without your parents noticing, which were basically Trigun, Cowboy Bebop, and Inuyasha, shows like that on like Adult Swim after like late, like, I forget what it's called, Midnight Run or whatever. And so I started rewatching those and I was like, dude, this stuff's awesome. And so things started moving really fast. I ended up going to an anime convention with a couple of friends, and I just attended this panel about how to get into the, you know, voiceover industry. It was taught by Joel McDonald. And that was basically it. I went in there and fell in love with what he was kind of preaching. And I decided that that's what I wanted to pursue for a little bit, but I didn't have any acting experience. So I got into community theater and did a few things there, then moved down to Texas. And in a nutshell, that's kind of how it all came to be. But yeah, I know my journey is way different than a lot of people, but you know, everybody has their own unique story on how they got into the industry and things like that. And sometimes you just end up here by chance, you know, it's like, I don't know a lot of people that voicing in anime was never even on their radar, but they somehow slipped into it and fell in love with it. And I don't think that's necessarily kind of my whole story, but there's some truth to that as well. It's like, hey, I just kind of stumbled across this, fell in love with it, and here we are.
So I'm sorry, I was having technical difficulties here while you were talking. The part you mentioned about you went to an anime convention. What was it about that panel specifically that called out to you?
Sure. So there were two panels that I went to, and both were led by Joel McDonald. The first one, and again, this was a long time ago, so my memory is a little fuzzy, but I do remember the names of the panels. So it was how to book your first gig or booking a gig in the industry. And that was more of a drill sergeant kind of approach from Joel. He was like, look, if you're here, I'm going to give you the nitty gritty. I'm going to give you the honest truth. You may walk out of this panel never wanting to pursue voiceover. And basically the things that resonated with me are like, you know, he would say, if you book 1 out of 100 auditions, you're doing well. You know, just basically setting this tone of expect to fail. But don't take like rejection as failure. You're going to audition and you're going to struggle. The key is going to be consistency, being fun to work with, and of course having some kind of talent. But really the keys are be fun to work with, be reliable, and networking. It's just like anything. It's a who you know sort of world. So and there were a lot of things that really stood out to me. I'm always a person that likes to challenge myself, and that seemed like something that's like, hey, this is a new way I could, you know, push myself or challenge myself and get myself out of my comfort zone. And so the next panel was just basically a mock audition panel. But the cool thing was, he said at the beginning that he's like, hey, if you attended the first panel this weekend on how to book a gig, you get priority to the front of the line because you took that extra step to get into to learn more about the industry. So I was one of the first people to go up and do a mock audition, and I completely embarrassed myself. I did. I really thought, hey, I can do this. I can go up, because my background was in broadcast. I went to the school for broadcast, and I worked about 3 years in radio and then about 3 years in television. And so I thought, oh, well, getting up and acting a little bit in front of some people isn't going to be very hard. Yeah, I pretty much embarrassed myself. But there was that. It was immediately after that, I'm like, you're never going to do that again. Like, you're going to get good enough to where you can go, and the next time you perform in front of someone, you're going to be impressive rather than embarrassing. And I caught Joel later on in the panel. He was just standing outside smoking a cigarette. And I was like, Joel, I don't mean to bother you while you're probably trying to get away from all the people, you know, in the convention, but I just seriously want to pick your brain about voiceover and how to get into the industry. And so that's when he was telling me about, you know, find a community theater, because I was explaining my situation. I was recently out of college, was working in television, but had no acting background. And I was like, how do I become a better actor? How do I make sure that I actually am ready for this and know when to take the next step and pursue this, you know, more seriously? And he just really pointed me in the direction of community theater and getting any sort of acting experience that I could. And that's what I did. And it was from there I auditioned for a few shows at some local theaters, and I booked lead roles, pretty consistently. And I was just like, maybe I do have a knack for this. And so singing and dancing is entirely different. So with theater, I had to sing and dance and all that. I wouldn't say I'm nearly as good of a singer or a dancer as a performer, but had to do all that. But again, just things that got me out of my comfort zone and forced me to grow were really the big things for me. And then after a few years of that, I started taking some workshops. I drive down from Kansas to Denton to take some workshops with Sonny Strait, who at the time had his own studio in Denton and would do several levels of voiceover workshops. And I just went down there. I'm nervous, so nervous. It was actually my first time taking myself to Texas, not traveling with family or anybody. So I was nervous. I was in a strange place. I was in a whole new environment, but it just solidified even more that I loved doing it. Like getting up and doing my monologue in front of that group of people and, doing some anime dubbing around these, other aspiring actors and stuff. It really just solidified for me, like, hey, this is what you really want to do. And so things just kind of led to another. And then I moved down to Texas and here we are.
So moving on to one of the most important roles, very underrated by the fans, but it's technically the core of the many series. Talking about your role in Love After World Domination as the narrator.
Yeah.
Okay.
And changer.
How do you describe this series of World Domination after?
Power Rangers meets. I don't know, like Power Rangers and.
Makes manga. Anime.
Yeah. It's like a Power Rangers manga where everything's kind of like food related. They're like Team Gelato and. That was goofy, but
you know what I love about all this?
Directors there, and again, this is funny. Like why I tie this back to different directors. They know you for different things, and this is something you don't really want to be known for in voiceover. Is having like a radio voice or a radio cadence to your reads. But that's what my background was. And I was still very much kind of stuck in that particular pattern at the time. And so she's like, I want you to do the narrator because, that just kind of is right up your alley right now. And at the time I was ecstatic. Of course I'm going to be ecstatic about any role I get. But that was the kind of the reasoning she gave me later on is she's like, with a narrator, you're not on screen. You're more of that disembodied voice kind of like on radio, And so you have a little bit more freedom. You have to match flaps. You don't have to do anything like that. So you get a little bit more freedom to just kind of read the line how you want. And the funny thing about the narrator is, again, it was a funny show, but the narrator just kind of played the comedic relief of that as well. Like they'd get to some awkward scene and then I'd come in and be like, allow me to explain. And then I'd go off on some little goofy explanation as to what was going on in the episode. And that was a lot of fun. Then, of course, we... throughout the series realized that in Japanese, they were using the same voice actor for the changer when they would change into their little gelato uniforms. Like, oh, that's the narrator. So if I remember correctly, they would hit that and I would go like, change gelato and all that. And then there were a lot of goofy things. I forget which episode it was, but there was one where they kept hitting the changer. And so I was in the booth just going, change gelato and all that because they just kept spamming the button and all that. So that was a lot of fun. But no, the narrator was my first kind of recurring role. And so for me, that will always have a special place in my heart just because that was the first one where I was like, hey, man, I'm going in weekly for a show. That was so cool. And I'll never forget that. So.
Okay. 2 things to mention. One, I love the fact that Power Rangers was such a big thing in our childhood.
Oh, yeah.
That everybody's always like, Power Ranger. Like, it's so iconic. And then 2, for being the narrator, okay, the first narrator I can think of that was like super important, at least in my life, was the Pokemon narrator.
Sure.
When we were growing up. So for me, like narrators in anime have such a very special place because anime that I can think of the top of my head with like super good narrators, apart from Love After World Domination and Pokemon, would be the Kaguya-sama, Love is War, and then the To Your Eternity. That's another one. And these were shows where, like, man, the narrators just, I love them because they have such a, how do I put it? They have such a way of obviously moving the plot forward too,
Mhm.
but also being that comedic relief, which I love, because you're like, oh my gosh, this person must be having such a blast in the booth too,
Yeah.
just narrating all these things.
So yeah, like when it comes to narration, probably my two favorite narrator performances would be the narrator for JoJo's, just because they keep advancing throughout the whole series. He's always the narrator for JoJo's, and then particularly during the Chimera Ant arc in Hunter x Hunter, the narrator essentially during parts of that arc narrates entire episodes essentially during that arc, and so it's like the impact of a narrator on the show. Now the narrator is pretty important throughout most of Hunter x Hunter, but especially during that arc, you'll remember there are some episodes where he's just kind of laying down everything that's going on, and that's where I was. Even though Love After World Domination and the type of narration that I was doing had nothing like that, that's where I was drawing inspiration from. Is like, hey, what are some performances in the past or shows that I've watched that I really like? What did they do that brought something to the show or helped the episodes become even better? And so I was always just drawing stuff from those. And then obviously with Love After World Domination, it was an entirely different vibe. But I definitely pay close attention to narrators and shows because, like you said, they definitely help drive a series forward, and they play their part, be it comedy or whatever, drama or whatever it may be. Narrators usually will play a pretty important role in a show when they show up enough. So.
And going back to moving on to one of the big series on Crunchyroll from last year, talking about Mobile Suit Gundam, which from Mercury, where you had the character of Till.
Yes.
Did you ever picture yourself having a role in a Mobile Suit series?
So I'm a huge Gundam fan, and to be in a Gundam series was huge for me. That was, again, still pretty early on, probably into the second year of my career voicing in anime. And to get that email asking if I wanted to have a part in a Mobile Suit show, I was like, say less. So the funny part about Till is he was a man of few words, and he was very soft-spoken. So I'd go in, and it seemed like all my sessions for Gundam were like, hey, do you have 15 minutes to come in on Tuesday for this? And I was like, there's my boy Till. He's going to have like two words. And so he came in, but he was in every episode. But then she'd be like, and I remember like later on, like in season 2, I went in for like a 45-minute session, and me and I were like, oh my God, do I have like 5 lines in this episode? It was like, it was funny because for once my character actually spoke up and kind of broke out of his shell and spoke in an episode a little bit. And even the other characters were like, you're talking? So I can just. He was a very soft, but that was kind of his role. Is like he didn't speak much, but when he spoke, you listened. And so he was part of the Earth Children group. And again, he was kind of a quiet leader of the group. Again, wasn't very outspoken, but if he did speak, it would get the attention of everybody just because that was kind of out of character for him. I think honestly, there were times I would go in for Mobile Suit Gundam, Witch from Mercury, and I would have a longer session for bit parts than for Till. But that's just the industry. Is sometimes like you never know. Even as a lead character, you can go in some episodes and you have like one line. That's just how it works. But it was a lot of fun, especially like you said, getting to be in a Gundam show. That makes a blast.
I can just imagine that one time you're like 45 minutes and then you record it and you're like, I can't speak for the rest of the day.
Oh,
it was too exhausting.
I'd be like, I need to warm up for this and all that. Like going in there because again, Till was always very soft spoken. He was always just kind of like, my range isn't really going to get much louder than this. He's very soft spoken. It's just so it's like, hey, if he's got to say like 6 lines as opposed to 2, that's not really gonna hurt me too much.
Which from Mercury really surprised me how it went from something kind of friendly, guys starting to be pilots, to dark as hell.
That's not out of the ordinary for Gundam shows. But yeah, I was kind of hoping there for a while. I was like, oh, I finally got a nice little feel-good Gundam show.
I mean, but the pilot episode shows so much. Like the pilot episode sets the tone for the rest of the series. But then it got violent, the pilot episode, and then we go through like a period of episodes where it's all like, oh, so happy, oh, it's training and this and that, and then nothing bad can happen like the first episode, and then boom.
Oh yeah,
bad.
Yeah, and that, like I said, one of my favorite Gundam series. I know this is kind of controversial, but I really like Iron-Blooded Orphans. And it starts that same way. The first episode of IBO is in-your-face action. Like, they're getting right into it. And then it kind of, like most Gundam shows, will dive off a little bit, get a little bit political, build up the antagonists and the plot twists and the underminings and all that, machinations of all the characters and stuff, and then it gets back into action. I really enjoyed that. But of course, I grew up on, like, Gundam Wing and G Gundam and all that, but I'm a big Johnny Young Bosch fan. Again, Trigun was one of my favorite shows that got me back into anime. And so, speaking of Power Rangers, we got Johnny. But no, Johnny plays Orga in IBO, so I really kind of gravitated to that. And that was really right when I was starting to delve back into anime. And it was like, that was one of those first shows for me that kind of planted a seed in the back of my head. I was like, hey, do you want to do this? Do you want to look into this? So that when it came to going to a convention and trying to find out a little bit more firsthand about voicing over, it was shows like that really kind of stuck with me. It's like, do you want to be in a show like this? Do you want to do this? Does this interest you? And I guess it did. So
Definitely. And to wrap up one of the latest series, where you have one of the characters like Gatekeeper, talking about the Demon Prince of Momochi House, where you had the role of the Gatekeeper Hakka.
Yeah, so that was a very fun character. There's a lot of characters that I've been that surprisingly show up for like 1 or 2 episodes that are very pivotal or important to the narrative of the story. And Hakka was one of those characters. He's a very whimsical guy. If you've seen the show, he's very aloof and kind of all over the place. He basically encounters the main character, and to get through the door that he's protecting, you have to basically sell your soul. But main character, a little caveat, didn't actually end up giving her soul to get in. And basically, she comes in, I press her. You know, it's like she really wants to come in and find out more about the history of this person she's in love with, and I start pressing her. I'm like, look, you know, you've also been trying to find out about the history of your family, your parents, who she had not really familiar with the story, but she didn't really have much of a memory of them. They were like dead before, you know, she grew up and all that. And I'm like, hey, you have a chance also to check the box of your parents, find out about your past, their past, all that stuff. Are you sure you really care more about this dude who just kind of came into your life recently? And, she stuck to her guns. She ended up opening his box and finding out all the past about him. But, it was kind of funny because he's a good guy, but at the same time, they're trying to make him be a little bit of an asshole. It's like, hey, come on, you know, she just wants to find out more about her friend. And my guy's like, sure. But then, of course, he's very flirty and he kind of a thing for her. But again, it was like a reverse harem in that show. She had all kinds of guys that wanted to be with her. And of course, my character was like, you're not too bad.
So, Monty, from all the characters that we have talked today, which kind of personality you enjoy more?
So that's the fun part about being an actor is, like, I really enjoy very stoic, straightforward, in your face kind of characters. But at the same time, I definitely have a knack and kind of just have a good time doing zany over the top characters, like the golden haired hero, where we basically, when I go into the booth and I know that I'm going to have some scenes where they need me to go over the top. And it's one of the bits, and I guess I know we wanted to talk about this a little later, maybe some advice we give to new actors. My favorite thing, and it was a bit of advice that I really took from some of the multiple directors along the way of trying to get into the industry, is make a director reel you in. Don't make them push you. So when you have to go in and give a very emotional, be it funny or sad or whatever sort of read, commit. Basically drop your inhibitions and just commit to it. Make the director be like, okay, you can go there, let's reel it back a bit. As opposed to, that was good, but can you give me a little bit more? And then being asked repeatedly to give more to each read. It's just go in there and commit. And for me, I think that was one of several big things that I overcame, was just learning to drop my inhibitions once I get into the booth. And, you know, we're all professionals in there. So it's not like the director and the sound engineer across the window from me. It's not like they haven't dealt with people being completely goofy in the booth before, or dealing with wild characters that do crazy things. This is anime. We've all seen it. We all know what kind of goes on. So you're not going to go in there and do something that they haven't seen before, probably. So just commit to the bit, give it your absolute best. And if they have to reel you back a little bit, that's a good thing. That means that they know you can go there. They just kind of need you to bring it back in for maybe how they want the scene to go.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
That's actually some really great advice, because a lot of people that are starting out, they're like, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Okay. I remember hearing this from Onyx when he went to Puerto Rico. There was a convention or workshop going on, and there were two directors for anime. And I remember Onyx telling me that some of the people that were participating in it, the directors were like, no, but take it here, take it there. And they were pushing them instead of reeling them in. And I love that.
Yeah, a big one for me was the second anime convention I went to. It was a panel with Austin Tyndall, and I can really forget the details about this panel itself, but all I know is he let me basically come up to the front and take the microphone. Why? I don't know. But he basically put me in charge of his panel for a little bit, and then he started kind of picking my brain about me wanting to get into voiceover. And that big one that he went to the back of the panel room, and he was like, okay, now I want you to yell, and I want to feel this yell from the other side of the room. And again, I was just different phases of things I guess I was going through with radio and television. I wasn't used to projecting like that. So again, I kind of went in there and embarrassed myself again. And here I go again, just maybe I'm not. Maybe this isn't for me, but it was a fun time. But he definitely taught me, how to project. And, there's different ways to yell. There's safe ways to scream and yell, and there's kind of dangerous ways to scream and yell. That doesn't matter if you're singing, acting, no matter what it may be. There's ways you can definitely hurt yourself when you're giving performances like that. So knowing proper techniques and how to take care of yourself and how to project is important. Yeah, I kind of went on a tangent there. I've embarrassed myself at several anime conventions trying to get into the industry. So I guess if that's another thing, don't let yourself get in your way. You always have room to grow. And yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Monty. For those who haven't followed you yet, which social media can they follow you?
Sure. So I'm not I have just about everything except TikTok. You can go ahead. My Twitter is like Hunter. It'd be like Monty X Thompson. Another lead where you can follow me on. Instagram, I think, is Monty Thompson VO. That's pretty much it. If you're going to follow me on anything, that's where to follow me. Again, all I really post are my role announcements. I just kind of stay quiet on social media. That's not really what I like to spend my time doing. It just seems like social media has become so toxic here lately. I'll just announce my role. Cheer on other people for their roles, and we'll let that be that.
Definitely.
But yeah, if you want to keep up to date on kind of what I'm voicing in, that would be the way to follow me.
And you have any problem finding Monty social media, just go down to the description of this video, expand the description, and right over there you will find all the links to Monty's social media. And because you already made it over there, we humbly ask you, we beg you for subscribe, like, and share, which really help to fight the day-to-day fight against the algorithm in YouTube. Subscribe and share in all our social media: YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Twitch, wherever you find us, and you can Google. Who knows who's going to be our next convention? We know we have a few more for the rest of the year. Who knows where we're going to be? But anyway, try to find us on social media, and definitely say hi. You see any convention. So Monty, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
I'll see you in the next episode. Sayonara.
See ya.
Bye.